Warning! Before we begin today's episode, we want to let listeners know that this discussion contains references to government corruption, financial fraud, abuse of taxpayer funds, and institutional negligence. These topics may be frustrating or upsetting, especially as we head into a new year when many Americans are hoping for honesty, accountability, and a fresh start. Our goal is not outrage for the sake of outrage, but clarity. Because ignoring corruption doesn't make it disappear, it makes it metastasize. Listener discretion advised.
Happy New Year, America, and welcome to Data Dissonance, where we start 2026 exactly the way 2025 ended, pulling back the curtain on things powerful people would really rather you stop paying attention to. While most of the country is nursing a hangover, making resolutions they won't keep, and pretending the calendar flip magically fixed everything, one story keeps getting uglier by the day. And that story is Minnesota. Because buried under ice, snow, and bureaucratic paperwork is one of the most brazen, wide-ranging fraud operations tied to public funds we've seen in years. And the deeper investigators dig, the worse it gets. New year, same playbook, bigger numbers. All right, let's bring in the crew as we kick off a brand new year the only way Data Dissonance knows how, with facts, fire, and zero patience for corruption dressed up as compassion. Joining me as always is Brian, bringing that MAGA fire and an unapologetic defense of the taxpayer who keeps getting robbed while being told to sit down and shut up. Rachel is here to cut through the narrative fog, separate incompetence from intent, and keep us grounded in what can actually be proven as this story keeps expanding. Daniel is ready to start pulling threads, because when fraud grows this big, this fast, it never happens in a vacuum. And coincidences stop being coincidences real quick. And Skylar is with us as well, pushing from the left and focusing on the people who were supposed to be helped by these programs, and how failures at the top end up hurting the very communities everyone claims to protect. This isn't a panel of talking points. This is a pressure test. New year or not, Minnesota's fraud story doesn't get a reset, and neither do the people who approved, ignored, or benefited from it. Let's get into it. Because this Minnesota story is no longer a developing situation, it's a developing pattern. What started out as whispers about questionable spending has turned into confirmed fraud, indictments, guilty pleas, and a growing list of organizations that never should have passed even the most basic oversight review. And here's what makes this so infuriating as we kick off a new year. Every time investigators pull one thread, three more unravel right behind it. This wasn't a one-off. This wasn't a rogue bad actor. This was a system that rewarded silence, punished scrutiny, and treated taxpayer money like an unlimited line of credit, all while people were told it was for the greater good. So let's walk through what we know, what keeps being uncovered, and why this matters far beyond Minnesota.
This is the part where people are finally waking up, Artie, because the numbers don't lie and neither does the pattern. We're talking about organizations that were handed millions with almost no verification, no meaningful audits, and zero urgency when red flags popped up. And now suddenly everyone's acting shocked that fraud exploded? Come on, this wasn't subtle. Luxury purchases, fake vendors, overlapping shell nonprofits, money moving in circles. Any private business would have flagged this immediately. But because it wore the right buzzwords and checked the right ideological boxes, oversight magically vanished. That's not compassion. That's negligence bordering on criminal, and taxpayers are the ones left holding the bag.
And Brian, what gets me is that we keep hearing mistakes were made, but mistakes don't repeat themselves at this scale without someone choosing not to look. Rachel, when you dig into this, what jumps out to you as the biggest failure point? The fraudsters themselves, or the institutions that kept writing the checks?
Honestly, it's the institutions, and that's what makes this so damaging. Fraud will always exist, that's not new. But systems are supposed to catch it early, and here they didn't. Warnings were raised internally. Inconsistencies were documented. Auditors questioned spending patterns, and yet funding continued. That tells me this wasn't ignorance, it was avoidance. People didn't want to be the ones asking uncomfortable questions because questioning meant slowing money, challenging narratives, or risking political backlash. And now the damage is twofold. Taxpayer trust is shattered, and the people these programs were meant to serve are now under suspicion through no fault of their own.
That's the real fallout. Innocent people paying the price for someone else's corruption. Daniel, when you see something grow this big without intervention, your radar always starts buzzing. What does this tell you about how this was allowed to operate for so long?
This tells me the system didn't just fail, it adapted to protect itself. Fraud at this scale doesn't survive unless it becomes normalized. Once the money starts flowing and nobody gets burned for approving it, silence becomes policy. People learn that asking questions slows careers, not corruption. And when oversight agencies hesitate, delay, or pass responsibility sideways, that creates a shield. This wasn't just about stealing money, it was about exploiting bureaucratic fear. And now that the spotlight's on, watch how fast everyone claims they were unaware, even though their signatures are all over the paperwork.
That's always the move. Nobody knows anything once subpoenas show up. Skylar, you've been vocal about this from a different angle. How do we talk about fraud honestly without letting it become an excuse to abandon people who genuinely need help?
By refusing to confuse accountability with cruelty. Corruption like this is devastating precisely because it gives ammunition to people who want to dismantle public support entirely. These programs exist for real reasons: hunger, poverty, instability, and when leaders fail to protect them, they hand critics a loaded weapon. The answer isn't less oversight or blind trust. It's stronger safeguards, transparency, and consequences at the top. Because right now, the communities that we're supposed to benefit are facing backlash, scrutiny, and reduced support, while the people who signed off on the spending hide behind process and delay.
And that's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The fraud didn't just steal money, it poisoned trust. Minnesota isn't an isolated case, it's a warning label. When systems prioritize optics over accountability, corruption doesn't sneak in. It settles down and gets comfortable. And as this story keeps unfolding, the real question isn't whether more will be uncovered. It's how long leadership will pretend this came out of nowhere. We're not done with this, not even close. All right, quick reset before we keep rolling. Because shows like this don't happen by accident, and they definitely don't survive on corporate talking points or billionaire backers. Data Dissonance is fully independent, listener-supported, and unapologetically willing to follow stories long after the headlines move on. If you believe independent media still matters, especially when it comes to exposing waste, fraud, and abuse, the easiest way to support the show is by checking out our merch. We've got Data Dissonance coffee blends for every mood, from lighter roasts that ease you into the morning to darker blends for the folks who wake up already annoyed at government incompetence. Hoodies, hats, mugs, stickers, gear that actually gets used, not junk that ends up in a drawer. And every purchase directly helps us keep the lights on, pay for production tools, hosting, research time, and everything else that lets us do this without watering it down. No subscriptions, no paywalls, no sponsors telling us what we can or can't say. Just real support from listeners who want the truth without the spin. All the links are in the show description. Grab something for yourself or gift it to someone who's already shaking their head at the news this week. All right, back to it. As we step into a brand new year, I want to be clear about something. Accountability doesn't reset just because the calendar does. Fraud doesn't magically disappear at midnight on December 31st, and trust doesn't rebuild itself because politicians issue statements about lessons learned. Minnesota's situation isn't just about stolen money. It's about a culture that learned how to hide behind process, paperwork, and performative compassion while real oversight quietly died. And that should worry everyone, no matter where you fall politically, because systems that protect themselves instead of the people they serve will always rot from the inside out. What makes this so infuriating is that none of this was inevitable. This wasn't some unavoidable disaster or natural failure. It was a choice, repeated over and over again, to ignore warning signs, to avoid uncomfortable questions, and to prioritize optics over integrity. And when those choices finally collapse under their own weight, it's never the decision makers who pay first. It's the taxpayers. It's the families who actually needed help. It's the communities now facing suspicion and cuts because someone higher up couldn't be bothered to do their job. Corruption doesn't just steal money, it steals credibility. And once that's gone, rebuilding it takes far more than press conferences and damage control. So as we move forward into 2026, here's the line we're drawing on this show. We're not letting stories like this fade quietly. We're not accepting "we didn't know" as an answer when signatures are on the paperwork. And we're not confusing accountability with cruelty or transparency with hatred. Demanding better from our institutions isn't extremism, it's citizenship. This year, we keep watching, we keep asking, we keep pulling threads even when it makes people uncomfortable. Because sunlight still works, and silence is how this stuff survives. Remember to speak truth, stir thought. Today's episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke thriller series, because sometimes fiction is the only place where truth is allowed to speak freely. If you're listening to this show and thinking, there's no way corruption runs this deep, or this feels too coordinated to be accidental, that's exactly the world these books live in. The Caleb Rourke series follows a former intelligence operative navigating a system where power protects itself. Institutions fail quietly, and the truth is always inconvenient to someone higher up the ladder. These aren't feel-good stories. They're pressure tests, asking what happens when loyalty to country collides with loyalty to conscience. Book 1, The Covenant Protocol, drops you straight into a shadow network where government programs, private interests, and unchecked authority overlap in ways most people never see, until it's too late. Book 2, The Prophet Directive, widens the scope, pulling back the curtain on influence operations, manufactured narratives, and how easily the public can be steered when fear and ideology do the heavy lifting. And coming next is Book 3, Black Echo Rising, where the cost of silence becomes unavoidable and the consequences finally come due. These books aren't written to comfort you. They're written to make you think, to question, and to notice patterns that don't show up in sound bites or headlines. If you enjoy Data and Dissonance, if you appreciate long-form conversations that refuse to stay shallow, this series was written for you. You can find all available titles right now on Amazon. Links are in the show description. Read it, question it, and remember, sometimes the most honest conversations happen on the page.